was quite enjoying life on Sir Topham Hatt's railway. He had made quick friends with Henry, and had gotten around to meeting Boko and Daisy as well. He enjoyed pulling either coaches or trucks, and didn't really prefer one over the other.
You've done quite well these past few weeks, Bear. You're versatile. A real mixed traffic engine.
Whenever Bear would get a turn at the express, he would have to travel back to the other railway. Typically, he'd meet another large steam engine like Gordon. But one afternoon, as he pulled in, he was met with another diesel.
Thrown it all away for an early retirement, have you? I see.
And just what do you mean by that?
You know what I mean. Wasting all that potential you're good for over there on that tin pot heritage line.
It's not tin pot, and it's not a heritage line either. It's a real railway. The kind you'll never know if you keep up that old act.
No, you're quite mistaken. The only old act here is that tin pot railway.
Oh, stow it, 199.
As well as your common sense, your eyes seem to be faulty too. I'm numbered 261. Goodbye.
Stupid thing. That night in the sheds, Bear complained about the diesel to the others.
There's a reason Sir Topham Hatt prefers steam engines over diesels on his railway,
huffed James. Boko just glared over at him.
I mean, how can you ever trust them? Any engine that doesn't use coal and water isn't exactly what one would classify as normal, now is it?
Now hold on just a moment. Boko and Bear are diesels and we can trust them.
Can we? I don't mean you, Boko. I mean other diesels. You've got to treat them with deep suspicion. You remember Diesel, and of course everything with 199 didn't happen more than a few weeks ago. They're a tricky sort. A tricky sort indeed.
I'm aware you've had your bad moments before, but you can't think like that all the time. At the very least, it certainly sours your mood.
And besides, from what I know, it's not like you're having these problems every other week. I mean, of course I was going to see mouthy BR Diesels on that side of the bridge. We just had old bestest best bud. You've got a little while yet before the next troublemaker makes an appearance. But I'm afraid to say it was much sooner than anyone thought. The next afternoon, a large diesel found himself coming across the bridge. He met Rosie in the yard, with a disgusted scowl across his face.
You there, steamer. Be a dear and remove this wretched train from my coupling so I can be off.
I'm sorry? Just who are you? There's no deliveries from the mainland due here until tomorrow.
Perhaps I've arrived early. A blessing in disguise indeed, if so. The faster I can rid myself of this antique shop of an island, the better.
Rosie could barely muster a reply at that, and fumed away in a huff. At last, the yard foreman arrived and spoke to the diesel's driver.
As you mistake, this train is due at Knapford today. It's the other big yard on the other side of the main line. There's no engines available. You'll have to take it.
The diesel nearly blew a gasket.
You mean I have to go further into the trenches?
Who said I was giving you a choice? Get moving before I disassemble you to fix my car.
Yes, sir.
Later that evening, he slithered into the big yard, hoping to go unnoticed. He did, but not for long.
Yoo-hoo! Diesels are coming!
How you doing there, big man? Come to steal our trains, have you?
I have not. I've just come to drop this here from Manchester. This is, Knapford, correct?
This be the place. We'll handle it from here. Now, be off with yourself now.
Why don't you two just tell me where I can get a rest before going back?
Never mind, you two. Leave him to me. I'll show our friend around. Ah, Boko, my dear engine. That'd be just swell. Now you behave for our friend here. You hear? Donald and Douglas snickered as the diesel rolled away with Boko. It's always nice to have visitors.
Likewise. It's always nice to meet a sophisticated engine such as yourself.
Of course. I do hope our accommodations will suit your needs. But as they rolled up to the sheds, the diesel gasped.
Absolutely not. To share a shed with such out-of-date objects. It's disgraceful for your controller to keep them here. Such dirty, smoky things.
7101, whispered James, with as much of a fake smile as he could manage. Just what were you saying last night?
In my defense, I was still correct last night. Today's a new day. Turnaround time, however, is most impressive with this one.
You! Yeah, I knew you had subjected yourself to this disgraceful line of work, but I had nary a clue that you were this, pathetic. To subject yourself to, stay here?
You can stay outside then if you're so proud.
On my railway, and yours as well, steam engines are kept in their place. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
This is my railway, and I'm staying with my friends. Thank you very much.
Of course you would. You've made your peace. Join us in the shed or find yourself a site. I'll make do.
The diesel squirmed as he backed slowly away towards a side track beyond the shed.
Driver says it'll be cold tonight. Maybe his engine won't start in the morning. That'd show him.
That old stuck-up thing. Who needs him? At least someone might want to preserve us.
You are a lot better looking. All dolled up with that red paint and nowhere to be.
The others laughed as James sunk back into the shed. The next morning, the firelighters came quite early for James and Henry. Boko and Bear were well used to the hissing and clanking and were still fast asleep. The visitor, however, could hear it from this siding and popped awake earlier than he had planned on. His driver wouldn't be around to take him home for hours, and he was dreadfully cold.
Revolting things. I'm better than this dreadful siding, and look where they made me go. I wish Driver would hurry along and get me out of here.
But he wouldn't be going anywhere for some time. Soon, James and Henry were steamed up and went out for work, leaving old Stuck-up to himself.
Peace at last.
He yawned and drifted back to sleep. As the day went on, the hours ticked away. Engines of all shape and size passed him by as he watched with increasing boredom. The diesel was growing restless without his driver. By late afternoon, he came running up.
Where have you been? I'm wet, I'm cold, I'm miserable.
Stow it! None of your business where I've been. Now let's get moving. Get on! The diesel had barely begun rolling out of his siding when he was stopped.
I'm just where do you think you're going?
Came a voice from the signal box. It was the yard foreman.
Oh, not this absurdity again. I'm trying to return home. I wouldn't be kept here any longer than necessary, and necessary has long since passed.
If you're going out over the bridge, you might as well make yourself useful and take the night goods to Barrow. We'll save James the trouble of doing it later, and we'll save me the trouble of listening to him complain.
As he arrived, the yard was strangely cleared out. No Donald, no Douglas, no Duck, Thomas, or Percy to help him with the shunting. The diesel grumbled to himself under his breath as he started putting his train together, but it took some time. Hey, not so rough! But the diesel wasn't listening to anyone. He dawdled about so long that by the time everything was ready to go, he had used up a large portion of his fuel supply. He looked around the yard for a fuel pump, but one was nowhere to be seen.
Back to that shack, back to that shack.
He was fuming as he made his way back to the sheds to borrow the fuel line.
I'm never going to escape.
He slowly crawled up outside the shed.
I can't believe I've got to disgrace myself in such a way as to enter this dilapidated waste pile.
Unfortunately, he didn't have a choice. He began rolling in, but as he tried to stop, he just kept sliding. He panicked as his wheels struggled for a grip, but it was far too late. With a crash and a bang, the diesel found himself face first through the back wall of the shed. Other than startling a poor workman something fierce, no one had been hurt. But the diesel was more furious than ever.
Stupidity! Utter stupidity!
He shouted frustratedly to no one in particular as his driver went to phone for help. Soon, Donald and Douglas arrived to clean up the mess.
I heard you weren't all that fond of our shit, but to try and tear it down, that's just uncalled for.
I did no such thing. The rails were slippery, leaky sludge water from one of your clapped-out relics, I imagine.
I'd look again. Unless I'm mistaken, which I'm not, you're in the old growler's berth. That's not boiler sludge, that's oil. Mighty slippery stuff, laddie. You best be careful. For the first time since he arrived, the Diesel had nothing to say. While Douglas took away the debris, Donald hauled the Diesel back to the yard. When James found out he'd have to pull the night goods after all, he was fuming. Until he arrived to pull it, however, the disgraced Diesel was coupled up at the back of the train between the last truck and the brake van.
Ah, it's about time you showed up. This homely-looking truck has been complaining for hours. Something about wanting to go home.
James could barely contain his laughter. Hard to be stuck up when you're stuck in, I suppose. Nevertheless, Douglas, I better be taking him away now.
It's long overdue, I say.
I would agree,
muttered the Diesel one last time as James started out of the yard. As James arrived at his signal on the other railway, there was Bear coming up from behind with the express.
I say, if this is what your idea of an early retirement looks like, well, leave me out of it, thank you very much.
Don't let appearance deceive you. He's going off on a wonderful extended holiday. Far, far away from us.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Maybe it's just me, but he's been a bit tense. A good holiday is just what he needs.
And with the drop of a signal, James and Old Stuck-Up were off into the night. One more clunky old Diesel put in his place. Way too many more to go. Way too many indeed. Bear thought for a moment about James's recent comments on Diesels, but given all that had happened recently, he couldn't blame him, right? Watching 199 and Old Stuck-Up get what they had coming to them was quite the show. But as for James, well, that's another story.